Imagine a man sitting completely alone in a freezing, dimly lit country house.
Oh, yeah. It's such a striking image.
Right. He is wearing these dusty, mud-stained peasant clothes, from working out in the fields all day.
Just a total broken guy at this point.
Exactly. He's recently been accused of a conspiracy. He's been thrown in a cell, physically tortured. I mean, he has lost his career, his status, his city.
Literally everything he worked for.
Yeah. But every single evening, this man takes off those dirty work clothes, he puts on his old grand court robes, and he sits alone at his desk in the dark.
It's almost cinematic.
It really is. And he sits there to write a desperate survival guide.
And that completely upends how we usually think about him, right? Because, of course, that man is Niccolò Machiavelli.
It is. And the survival guide he was writing was The Prince.
Yeah.
Now, if you are listening to this deep dive right now, chances are you've used the word Machiavellian at some point in your life.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Everyone has.
Right. And usually it brings up a very specific image. The ruthless corporate boss or the plotting politician.
The sociopath who just crushes everyone else to get to the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Smiling the whole time while holding all the cards.
Yeah.
But today, we are taking a stack of Machiavelli's original texts. So we've got excerpts from The Prince, his historical account of the Duke Valentino, and his biography of a warlord named Castruccio Castracani.
Some really fascinating sources.
And we are fundamentally flipping the script on all of this.
We really are entirely reframing his work today.
Because when you actually read the texts in their original context, The Prince is it's absolutely not a handbook for all powerful tyrants looking to dominate the world.
No, not at all.
It is the incredibly pragmatic, terrified response of a fragmented nation that is just completely surrounded by hostile superpowers.
It's a manual for the weak.
Yes, a manual for the weak. So if you've ever described a scheming colleague as Machiavellian, prepare for a massive aha moment.
You're going to see him in a totally new light.
We're going to reveal the terrifying reality Machiavelli was actually writing about and how looking through this, this lens of extreme vulnerability changes his advice entirely.
It changes everything.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp why he's giving this seemingly cutthroat advice, we have to look at the geopolitical meat grinder he was living in.
Yeah, you really have to strip away the modern idea of Italy.
Right, like the romantic vacation destination with the wine and the pasta.
Exactly. Because in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, so during Machiavelli's career, Italy simply did not exist as a single nation.
It wasn't unified at all.
Not even close. It was a completely fragmented landscape. So you had the Pope wielding actual temporal power in Rome.
Like a king.
Right. And then you had the Venetians, the King of Naples, the Duke of Milan, and of course Machiavelli's own people, the Florentines.
Just a bunch of separate states.
Yeah, and they were relatively weak. They were constantly squabbling over borders.
I mean, it really makes me think of a street full of small, independent mom-and-pop shops.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
No, like they spend all their time bickering over property lines, stealing each other's customers, completely oblivious to the fact that massive, ruthless, multinational corporations are moving into the neighborhood.
And those corporations do not care about their petty squabbles.
No. And these corporations, which are France, Spain, Germany, they don't just want to compete. They want a hostile takeover.
They do. They are crossing the Alps and invading, basically, whenever they feel like it.
Just rolling right over them.
Which is exactly what defined Machiavelli's entire existence. I mean, he wasn't observing this from some ivory tower.
Right. He was in the thick of it.
He was a high-level civil servant and a diplomat for the Free Florentine Republic. He was the guy trying to negotiate with these giant multinational empires.
The guy trying to keep the mom-and-pop shop open.
Exactly. But when the geopolitical winds shifted, the Florentine Republic just collapsed.
It's so tragic.
The powerful Medici family returned to rule Florence, and Machiavelli was purged. Like you said in the intro, he was imprisoned, he was tortured, and he was exiled.
He literally watched his world burn to the ground.
He did. And in chapter 26 of The Prince, he describes Italy as being, and this is a quote, without head, without order, beaten, despoiled, torn, overrun.
Wow. Beaten, despoiled, torn.
Yeah, it's incredibly bleak.
So it's not just some abstract political theory for him. It's state collapse. It's total anarchy.
Exactly.
But, if you're listening to this on your commute or at the gym, you might be thinking, okay, sure, the guy had a hard life, but pragmatism still just sounds like a polite word for doing evil stuff.
Right. It feels like an excuse.
Exactly.
Mm.
Like, how does he actually justify abandoning morality.
Well, he justifies it through the basic mechanics of sheer survival.
Okay, how so?
He addresses this explicitly in chapter 15. Machiavelli argues that if a leader tries to act entirely up to their professions of virtue,
Like, if they insist on being a perfectly good person.
right, if they want to be purely good in a sea of actors who are not good, they will simply be destroyed.
Just eaten alive.
Yeah. He points out that focusing on how men ought to live, rather than how they actually do live, results in the ruin of the state.
Which really shifts the whole perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It completely reframes it.
It's not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It's cold, calculated pragmatism.
Exactly.
Because when your society is on the verge of being pillaged and overrun, conventional morality just becomes a luxury that a weak state simply cannot afford.
Right. His advice isn't about how to be a bad person. It's about the uncomfortable psychological shifts you have to make to prevent your start from being annihilated by bad people.
Okay, so if Florence and the other Italian states are these weak, rich targets surrounded by hungry empires, how on earth were they surviving at all?
Well, they tried to find shortcuts.
Because they obviously didn't have the massive populations to field huge armies and fight back directly, right?
No, they didn't. So they essentially did what wealthy, desperate entities do today. They outsourced their defense.
Oh, right. Outsourcing.
Yeah, and Machiavelli dedicated whole sections of his work to explaining why this outsourcing was just a spectacular, catastrophic failure.
I mean, reading through the sources, his hatred for this system just drips off the page.
He absolutely despised it.
Because they lacked a centralized military, right? So the Italian states relied almost entirely on mercenaries.
Yes, the condottieri.
And auxiliaries, too.
Yeah.
Which were foreign troops lent to them by another powerful ruler, like the French or the Spanish.
Exactly.
But I want to understand the why here. Why is outsourcing so fatal in his eyes?
It all comes down to basic economic incentives.
Okay, incentives.
Yeah, in Chapter 12, Machiavelli breaks down the psychology of the mercenary. A mercenary captain basically treats war like a business.
Right.
And his soldiers are his capital investment. They have absolutely no intrinsic loyalty to the state that hires them.
Why would they? It's just a paycheck.
Exactly. Their only motivation is a small stipend of pay. And as Machiavelli points out, that stipend is not enough to make a man willing to die for you.
So if things get really bloody, the mercenary's best financial move is to just
retreat.
Yeah. And why risk your assets, right?
Right, precisely. It incentivizes this kind of theatrical warfare. He says in peacetime, they drain your treasury, and in wartime, they run away.
That's brutal.
It is. And he brings up the invasion of Italy by King Charles of France to prove this point.
Oh, this is the part with the quote, right?
Yes. He uses this brilliant, biting historical phrase. He says, Charles conquered Italy with chalk in hand.
I read that in the source and literally had to stop. Conquered with chalk.
It's such a great image.
The implication there is just staggering.
It really is. It means the invasion was so incredibly easy, so completely unopposed by these highly paid Italian mercenaries, that the French king didn't even have to order his men to draw their swords.
Wait, really? No fighting at all?
Practically none. All he had to do was send his quartermasters ahead with a piece of chalk to mark up the doors of the houses where his soldiers were going to sleep.
Oh, wow. So they just walked in and picked their hotels.
Exactly. The entire mercenary defense system was a complete illusion.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And yet, he says the auxiliaries, so that the troops you borrow from a powerful ally are actually a worse trap than the mercenaries.
Oh, much worse. Because the incentives are even more dangerous.
How so?
Well, as he warns in Chapter 13, auxiliaries might be disciplined, excellent soldiers in themselves, but for the weak prince who calls them in, they are essentially a death sentence.
Because they answer to someone else.
Right. Think about the mechanics of it. If they lose the battle, you are undone. Your state is conquered by your enemy.
Game over.
But if your borrowed army wins, you are now entirely at their mercy.
Oh, I see.
You've just invited a foreign superpowers army right into your living room, and you have no way to make them leave. You become their captive.
Okay, I have to push back on Machiavelli here for a second.
Sure.
It's easy to criticize, but if you are a tiny, fragmented state without a massive population, isn't outsourcing your only logical choice?
That's the counter-argument, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how can a weak state possibly field its own army against a giant like France? What is his actual alternative?
His alternative is this unwavering foundational belief that a state must arm its own citizens.
Even if they're small.
Yes. You have to create a national militia. He acknowledges the terrifying difficulty of doing this as a small state, but he insists that relying on the arms of others is guaranteed suicide.
It's the lesser of two evils for him.
Right, and he actually uses a story from the Old Testament to illustrate the mechanics of this vulnerability.
The story of David and Goliath.
Yes, it's such a perfect metaphor.
It really is. Because when David, the underdog, offers to fight the giant Goliath, King Saul tries to help, right?
Yeah.
He dresses David in his own royal armor and gives him his weapons.
The king's own gear.
Yeah. But David puts them on and immediately rejects them. He tells Saul he cannot fight in them because they completely restrict his movement.
I can't even walk in them.
Right. So he chooses to face the giant with only his own sling and his knife.
Because that royal armor wasn't built for him. It was built for a completely different kind of warfare.
Exactly. If he wears it, he's just a slow, clumsy target.
Which perfectly encapsulates Machiavelli's lesson here.
The arms of others.
Right. He summarizes it beautifully. He says, the arms of others either fall from your back, weigh you down, or bind you fast.
The takeaway for you, the listener here,
Yeah.
is that outsourced power is always an illusion.
It's fake security.
Yeah, a vulnerable leader must rely solely on what they can directly control, even if those tools seem smaller or, less impressive.
Exactly.
So we strip away the borrowed armor. The vulnerable state has to fight with just a sling and a knife.
Right.
But that creates a massive problem, doesn't it? Because you can't just go toe-to-toe with a giant using a knife.
No, you'll be crushed.
Right. Brute strength is exactly what the weak state lacks. So you need a completely different behavioral toolkit to survive.
You have to fight incredibly smart. And that's the pivot. Machiavelli introduces a psychological model for leadership in Chapter 18 to address this exact vulnerability.
Okay.
He brings up the mythological figure of the centaur, Chiron, so half man, half beast.
Right.
He argues Chiron is the ideal tutor for a prince. Because humans are flawed and will inevitably break their promises to you when it serves their interests, a vulnerable leader cannot just rely on human laws or treaties.
Because the giants will just rip up the treaties.
Exactly. So they must know how to tap into the nature of the beast.
And he breaks that beast nature down into two very specific mechanisms, right? The lion and the fox.
He does. And this is crucial. The lion represents terrifying brute force.
Okay.
But the lion has a fatal flaw. It cannot protect itself from traps. The fox, on the other hand, is pure cunning. It can spot a trap from a mile away, but it doesn't have the strength to fight off a pack of wolves.
So you need both.
Yes. Therefore, a weak prince must be a fox to recognize the snares being set for him, and a lion to terrify the wolves that are circling.
Okay, if we put this into modern terms, it's almost like cybersecurity for a small tech startup that's facing corporate espionage.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Like brute force, the lion is your massive firewall.
Yeah.
It's great at blocking a blunt, overwhelming denial of service attack.
The wolves.
Exactly. But a firewall can't spot a highly sophisticated, socially engineered phishing scam.
No, it just lets it right through.
Because that's a snare. For that, you need the fox like an active threat hunting algorithm that sees the malicious code, recognizes the deception, and neutralizes the threat from the inside before the firewall is even tested.
That's a brilliant way to frame it. You have to see the code behind the deception.
Right. Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, definitely.
Because Machiavelli gives us this chilling, real-world historical example of this fox and lion algorithm in action.
He does.
The story of Cesare Borgia, the Duke Valentino, at a place called Senigallia.
Yeah, and this is where the text gets incredibly dark.
Very dark. Because Borgia is often viewed as the ultimate historical villain, yet Machiavelli holds him up as this masterclass in necessary survival tactics.
Right, because Borgia really understood the mechanics of the snare.
Set the scene for us.
So Borgia had been using mercenary commanders, specifically the powerful Orsini and Vitelli families, to conquer territory for him.
Outsourcing again.
Exactly. But these commanders realized Borgia was getting way too powerful. They realized they were essentially creating a master who would eventually just control them.
They saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah. So they held a secret meeting at a place called Maginone to plot his downfall.
A mutiny?
A total mutiny. They conspired to cut his throat and take everything.
And Borgia finds out.
He does.
He realizes his entire outsourced security team is about to assassinate him. He is totally exposed.
Completely exposed.
And if he relies on the lion-like, if he just declares war on them, he loses.
Right.
Because they control the actual troops.
Exactly. He doesn't have the brute force. So he deploys the cunning of the fox. He completely masks his intentions. He feigns absolute reconciliation. He acts as if he realizes he overstepped. And, he just wants to be their partner.
Just plain dumb.
Really laying it on thick. He showers these men with gifts, money, promises. He plays the naive, overly friendly fool so convincingly that these hardened, cynical mercenary captains actually believe they have him under control.
They fall for the phishing scam.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Wow.
Borgia lures them to a meeting in this coastal town of Senigallia, and he carefully orchestrates the logistics.
Setting the trap.
Yeah, he makes sure their troops are quartered miles away from the town, while his own deeply loyal men are secretly positioned all around the perimeter.
Oh.
When the commanders arrive, totally disarmed by how friendly he's being, he invites them into a private chamber in his quarters.
And the algorithm switches from the fox to the lion.
Instantly, he has them seized, and later that night, he has them strangled.
Just like that.
He neutralized the leadership of a massive internal mutiny in one single ruthless stroke, without fighting a protracted civil war.
Okay, here's where we really have to wrestle with the text.
Yeah.
Because listening to this, it just sounds like a horror movie. It is premeditated, cold-blooded murder.
It absolutely is.
And if you're listening and feeling slightly sick to your stomach right now, you're not alone.
Not at all.
How does Machiavelli possibly separate this from just standard evil tyranny? Like, how does he justify this as good advice?
It's definitely the most difficult part of his philosophy to digest.
Yeah.
But he synthesizes this in Chapter 8 through a concept that sounds paradoxical. He calls it cruelty well used versus cruelty badly used.
Cruelty well used.
Right. Borgia's actions at Senigallia were, in Machiavelli's strict mechanical definition, well used.
Because it worked.
Because the violence was applied surgically. It was executed at one single blow to permanently eliminate a direct existential threat and secure the state.
So it's about the finite nature of the violence.
Yes. Badly used cruelty is this drawn-out, pointless oppression that just grows over time and simply makes the populace hate you.
Just constant terror.
Right. Well-used cruelty is a terrifying but finite act of survival.
I see.
Machiavelli explicitly states that injuries ought to be done all at one time, so they offend less, while benefits should be given little by little.
Wow. It's really treating statecraft like an amputation.
That's exactly what it is.
Like, if the arm is gangrenous, you don't slowly cut off an inch a day. That's just torture, and the patient dies anyway.
Right.
You sever it in one swift, brutal strike to save the rest of the body.
Yeah.
And again, the context matters so much here. If Italy is bleeding out, and your state is literally seconds away from being overrun, chaotic, endless violence is the enemy.
It's the worst-case scenario.
Yeah, so surgical survival tactics are the only way to establish any semblance of order.
The vulnerable leader just cannot afford endless, messy conflicts. They don't have the resources for it.
Right.
They have to solve the problem permanently so they can return to stability.
Okay, so let's say our weak prince has somehow managed to do this. They've amputated the internal threats using the fox and the lion. They've armed their own citizens with slings and knives. They've secured the neighborhood.
They're surviving.
Right. But what about the external threats?
The empires.
Yeah. What happens when two of those massive multinational giants, say France and Spain, decide to use your backyard as a battlefield?
This brings us to Chapter 21, which honestly contains some of Machiavelli's most counterintuitive advice.
Really?
Yeah. He strongly advises against neutrality.
Wait, what?
He says a prince is only truly respected when he is a true friend or a downright enemy.
Okay, wait. If I'm the weak state, keeping my head down feels like the absolute safest play.
It feels like common sense.
Right. If two massive empires are tearing each other apart, why on earth would I formally declare war, pick a side, and draw their attention?
You'd want to hide.
Wouldn't staying perfectly neutral be the only logical choice?
It feels like it should be. But Machiavelli looks at the mechanics of neutrality for a weak state, and he just sees a trap.
Okay, how so?
He argues that if two powerful neighbors fight and you stay neutral, you are doomed regardless of the outcome.
Doomed the other way.
Yeah. Think about the psychology of the victors. If the empire that wins is powerful, you inevitably become their prey.
Because they're already there.
And because they know you won't fight to defend yourself, you just proved your weakness by staying neutral.
Oh, well.
And the empire that loses, well, they will refuse to shelter you because you didn't have the courage to stand by them with a sword in your hand when they actually needed you.
You burned both bridges.
Exactly. He uses an ancient historical example to back this up, too. The Romans in Greece.
Oh, right, the invasion of Antiochus.
Yes. Antiochus entered Greece to fight the Romans. He sent envoys to the Achaeans, who were essentially caught in the middle of all this, advising them to just stay neutral.
Just stay out of it.
Right. But the Roman legate responded by telling the Achaeans that neutrality was the absolute worst path they could take.
What did he say?
The Roman warned them that without favor or consideration, neutrality would simply make them the guerdon of the conqueror, meaning the prize for whoever wins.
Wow. You're not a bystander. You're the trophy.
Exactly. The winner wants allies who will bleed for them, and the loser wants allies who will bleed with them. Neutrality just makes you contemptible to both.
That's so fascinating.
It really highlights Machiavelli's core political philosophy. He says, in politics, there are no perfectly safe courses.
Because a safe path doesn't exist.
No. Prudence isn't about finding a perfectly safe path. Prudence is about analyzing the mechanics of every threat and choosing the least dangerous one.
Which means trying to avoid making a choice is actually the most dangerous choice of all.
Yeah, because it leaves your fate entirely at the discretion of the winner.
And a prince, he insists, must never voluntarily place himself at the discretion of anyone else.
You can't control the outcome of the massive war, but you can at least control your own decisive actions.
Man, when you filter the prince through this lens of extreme vulnerability, the entire text transforms.
It really does.
It's no longer a playbook for evil. It's a manual for stopping the bleeding.
Yeah.
And this really culminates in chapter 26, which is literally titled An Exhortation to Liberate Italy from the Barbarians.
It's his big finale.
It is a passionate, desperate plea from a man watching his homeland be pillaged. He is basically begging for a leader willing to use these harsh surgical methods to finally unify the country and drive the invaders out.
It forces us to ask some deeply uncomfortable questions about what is actually necessary when survival is genuinely on the line.
It totally redefines the word Machiavellian.
Completely.
But before we wrap up today's deep dive, we have to spend some time on the final source we looked at.
Oh, yes. This is the twist.
Yeah, because just when you think you completely understand Machiavelli's worldview, he throws in this profound philosophical twist. We read his biography of a man named Castruccio Castracani.
Right, and Castruccio is basically the quintessential Machiavellian success story.
He lived the book.
He did. He rose from absolute obscurity. He was actually found abandoned as an infant in a vineyard to become this brilliant, ruthless warlord.
A self-made prince.
He embodied everything we've just discussed.
He used force and fraud perfectly.
Yeah.
He conquered Lucca. He seized Pistoia by luring the leaders of both rival factions into a trap and having them murdered.
Pure fox and lion.
Exactly. He even defeated the massive Florentine army at the Battle of Seraval using brilliant terrain tactics to offset his smaller numbers.
Just a tactical genius.
He built a vast Tuscan empire from scratch. He's a living proof that the brutal advice in The Prince actually works.
He is. But then, at the absolute height of his power and glory, Castruccio catches a fever after a battle.
Right.
And as he lies on his deathbed, knowing the end is near, he calls in his heir, a young man named Pagolo Gunigi.
To give him some final advice on how to rule the empire he just built.
Exactly.
And what he says, I mean, it completely blew my mind.
It's so unexpected.
Because this ruthless conqueror doesn't tell his heir to keep expanding. He doesn't tell him to keep using the fox and the lion.
No, he expresses profound regret.
Yeah, it is an incredible moment of reflection.
Castruccio tells his heir that if he had known he was going to die so young, he would have done things completely differently.
He realizes the fatal flaw in his own empire.
He does. He says he would have fought less, he would have made fewer enemies.
He explicitly says he would have been content to just govern his original territories, Lucca and Pisa.
Right, a much smaller footprint.
He realizes that by constantly expanding through force and fraud, he created an inheritance that is practically unmanageable.
It's too big to hold.
He tells his heir, I am leaving you a vast state, but it is deeply unstable, and it is surrounded by vengeful foes like the Florentines who hate our family.
From a strategic standpoint, it's a devastating admission.
It really is.
Because an empire built purely on cunning and surgical cruelty requires the founder's constant exhausting vigilance to maintain.
You can never blink.
Exactly. And the moment the founder dies, the heir inherits all the enemies, all the grudges.
But they don't necessarily inherit the cunning.
No, they don't. Castruccio realizes that his endless conquests didn't actually buy security. They just bought a bigger target on his son's back.
He literally tells his son, Your only hope now is to make peace with the enemies I've spent my entire life creating.
Wow.
And the reason this is so profound is that Machiavelli wrote this.
Right.
This isn't a critic tearing Machiavelli down. This is Machiavelli himself exploring the absolute limits of his own philosophy.
It suggests a deeply nuanced worldview.
Yeah.
It implies that while the fox and the lion are absolutely necessary survival tactics in a crisis, a state built entirely on endless conflict and deception is inherently fragile.
It can't last forever.
No. The ultimate goal of all this dark pragmatism shouldn't be endless conquest, but the eventual establishment of stability and peace.
The survival tools are not the same as the building blocks for lasting greatness.
Well said.
Yeah. So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder today. The next time you hear someone describe that ruthless, climbing corporate boss as Machiavellian, remember the broken boot of Europe.
Remember the context.
Right. Remember the man in the freezing house writing in the dark.
Realize that true Machiavellian behavior doesn't actually come from a confident master of the universe.
Exactly. It comes from someone who feels incredibly vulnerable. Someone who is absolutely terrified of being destroyed by the giants around them, desperately swinging a sling and a knife in the dark, just trying to survive one more day.